What's good, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the What's a Filter podcast. I am your host, and I go by the name of Taylor Vanderbilt. As always, I'm so excited for you guys to be here and listening to me, taking time out of your busy days, busy schedules to hear me talk about things going on around us, man. I couldn't be more appreciative. Also, you can find this podcast on YouTube. You can also find it, the audio version, on Apple Podcast, as well as Spotify, Pandora, Amazon. Pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find the What's a Filter podcast. So, without further ado, let's hop right in, man. Before I get into the topics for today, though, I want to kind of go back to episode 2 real quick, because there was something that I mentioned and kind of talked about that not necessarily came to fruition. That's not the right term, but it kind of proved me right, I guess you could say, this weekend. So this past weekend, Coila Rae performed in Houston. Now, if you remember back, if you watched episode 2 or listened to it, then you remember me talking about how I thought Chica should be up for best female hip hop artist at the BET Awards. Not that the BET Awards matter or is a big deal, but I think in your culture, you should be up for an award that you're clearly and should be in the running for. But anywho, so Coila Rae had a performance over the weekend in Houston, and from the videos, nobody was vibing with her. Absolutely nobody. There was 2 or 3 videos I saw. One it looked like everybody was doing the old Black Beatles freeze. I can't even remember the name of what it was, but the old Black Beatles song. Like, everybody was just frozen, solid. And then there was another video that tried to make it seem better for her, but it still was like, it just wasn't what it should have been for an artist that is kind of popping or trending right now. So it just kind of goes to show you that the real comes to light. Eventually the light was going to stop shining for her, and I feel like it's starting to kind of show right now. But that's neither here nor there. I just thought it was funny, so I was like, I want to let everybody know exactly what happened. And it just kind of goes to show you that, that would never happen to Chica. That's all I'm going to say. But, man, I got some more things that I want to talk about. First thing, though, is another thing that I saw this weekend, and it was the iCarly, or the preview for the iCarly reboot. Now, for me, I grew up in the era of iCarly, Drake and Josh, all that stuff. So Miranda Cosgrove has been around forever in my life. But iCarly was just one of those special shows. Like that run that Disney Channel had. That run that Nickelodeon. And I guess you could throw Disney Channel and Cartoon Network. Those 3 channels for, the early 2000s all the way to probably 2015-ish. I'd say about 2015. They were kind of gunning. They just were producing quality content. Disney had the in real life shows like handled, whether it was Lizzie McGuire or Even Stevens. Cartoon Network obviously was all cartoons, but they had that locked down with Codename Kids Next Door, Johnny Bravo, whatever. And then Nickelodeon was kind of like a happy mix of the two. It had the in real life stuff with like your iCarlys, your Drake and Joshes, things of that nature. But then it also had the cartoons with like SpongeBob. So, you really couldn't go wrong. But iCarly, for me, being a teenager, when it was out, it was my show that I would just watch pretty much whenever it was on. So I love iCarly. So to see a reboot with no Gibby and Sam, now I understand that there are reasons to that, but to see a reboot with no Gibby and Sam really bothers me. I just think you shouldn't do it, personally, if you don't have all the characters. I'll get into that later when I talk about my rules to a reboot. But I just don't think you can do this show, iCarly, without Sam for sure, but without Gibby either. I don't think it works. I've seen that they've added 2 new characters, at least. I think she has like a manager or like a partner or friend or whatever that like helps. So that's one thing. And I understand what the character, is doing and why she's there. But B, I understand that there's diversity in the character as well. So I get it, Nickelodeon. I get it, or Paramount Plus. But it's not gonna work without Gibby and Sam for me. And another reason that I saw through the previews is why it's not gonna work is because they didn't really change anything. All they did was take the same childishness that they had on iCarly and make it into kind of an adult show. And I say this because if you've seen the preview, you might have been thrown off by this like I was. But in the preview, Spencer curses. Now, I'm in my 20s, so like cursing on a TV show, that's not what I'm worried about. It's more of the fact that when you curse on a show, it's no longer a kid show anymore. That it's obviously been upgraded or changed to a more adult, teenager type show. And so from there, it's kind of like, well, okay, is the vibe of the show going to change? Is it still going to be them doing really dumb things that like kids find funny? And sure enough, maybe not even 10 seconds later, there's a scene where Spencer says, we got hot wings, hot Cheetos, and hot beer. And he drinks the hot beer and he spits it out. And it's just like, he probably would have done the same thing with soda 10 years ago. But it just kind of, it does, to me, it just doesn't, it's not going to hit the same. It's the same childishness with older people, and it's not going to hit the same. So with that, though, in watching that preview and thinking about all this, it kind of got me thinking, and I kind of already mentioned this, but it got me thinking about other shows that have rebooted that I like to watch and why they didn't really work and things of that nature. And I decided to come up with a list of rules that I think we should put in place to, if a show's going to reboot, they should follow these rules. And I'll explain why on each one. But I want to talk about these. So my first rule on shows should only reboot if. That's what we're going to do. Shows should only reboot if they didn't wrap up. That's rule number one. So if a show, and what I mean by this is if a show did not wrap up, then I will give the go ahead for the reboot. Okay. So for example, Star, my girlfriend's watching Star right now or rewatching it. That was on Fox. It might not be the greatest show ever, but it didn't end. There was no real ending. So a reboot there makes sense to me because you're just wrapping something up. You're really not even rebooting a show. You're just wrapping up what you already, have done. Other shows that finished off weird, like The Sopranos, I understand that's probably how they wanted to end it off, but you can essentially reboot The Sopranos because a lot of people felt like there was a lot left missing from the end of that, which I'll get into them later. But people felt there was a lot missing from that. So any show that you can think of that you feel like there's a lot missing from the end, or that you didn't get an ending, not that you didn't get a proper ending, a la Game of Thrones, the worst last season ever, but that you didn't get an ending, period. So if that happens, I think that is a case for a show to be rebooted. Second rule, moving on to the second rule. Second rule is all characters, and it's a caveat to this, all characters should be alive, willing to do the reboot, and they can still perform the character that they were. And that was a lot, so let me break that down. So all characters are alive. That's the first thing. I know sometimes I believe that's a caveat, that you can have a little caveat to that one. For example, Fast and Furious, they should just stop making movies, seriously. But after Paul Walker died, they did a good job of being able to make that movie without him being there. So for something like that, or I'm trying to think off the top of my head of other movies or productions where somebody passed away and they had to do a sequel, things like that, where it's a character you built around, but you have other storylines, and you can kind of, as long as it's not a main character. Like, for example, you can't do Fresh Prince again because James Avery is not here. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to watch the Fresh Prince without Uncle Phil. Like that, I mean, one of the biggest parts of the show outside of Will, you know what I'm saying? Then you have the Boondocks, for example, is trying to do this. The Boondocks is essentially doing a reboot of the show without Pops. R.I.P. John Witherspoon, but it doesn't make sense to me at all as to why you would even attempt to do it, because you can't recreate that magic that the show had, because one of the biggest people in the show is gone and you can't get that back. So that is why I kind of subscribe to the fact I think everyone should be alive, or you should only do a reboot if everyone's alive, but there can be caveats around it, if there's certain things as I've gone through. Second part of this is not only are they alive, but they will do it. So a lot of times when it comes to recasting people or reboots, people are recast or taken out. Particularly, I know for a fact of a new reboot that's coming to Sex and the City. In Sex and the City, Samantha is out of the reboot, or Kim Cattrall, rather, the lady who played Samantha. But to me, she is the sex part of Sex and the City, and without her, it'll still be a solid show, just because Sex and the City was such a good show. It was a strong show, but that Samantha storyline and what she added to the show, it's not going to be the same at all. And I wish her and Carrie or Sarah Jessica Parker could get it together and give us a great TV show, kind of a reminder of what it was. But I just don't think I don't think it'll hit the same. I'm not gonna say it's not gonna work, but I don't think it'll hit the same, because that element of Samantha being there, it will change it. And it's very similar to why I don't want Friday to come out, or a new Friday to come out, especially now. And this kind of goes back to my first point, but especially now, because I know that, Smokey or Chris Tucker probably won't do Smokey again. And even if he did, would it hit the same? Because he's not as young, he's not as I don't know if it would hit the same now as it would have in maybe 2005. You know what I'm saying? But just the fact that he wouldn't do it for so long, I was okay with not getting one, getting another one, because it was just all right, cool. I want Smokey. That's what I want. So, and now with Tiny Lister gone, Debo not here, it makes it even more of a case. But that's the second part of that. So we've gotten through all characters should be alive, and they will do it. And now here's the most crucial part of this rule, the second rule. They can still perform the character they were. Now, another thing that happens in reboots is that they bring characters back to perform the same character. If everyone's able to come back, they're alive and well, and they want to come back and do it, cool. They come back and they perform the same character they were. The only problem is this character always tends to be has to be a grown-up version of the character, or a version of that character in a different time, in a different space. And that doesn't always work ever. It's I just think it's weird sometimes, especially when it's someone was younger, way younger, and then they got progressively older. For example, if you have in Roseanne, some of those people in the show were kids when they played on Roseanne originally, and now to see them as full grown adults is just oh, this is a weird dynamic. I don't know how I can. It's not the same show. They're trying to do the exact same thing, the exact same show, but it's not the same, because the kids aren't kids. The adults are now older people. They're elderly. It's just different. It's just different. So I believe that as long as the characters can still perform that same character, though, you're good. So let me think of one. So 24, for example. As long as Kiefer Sutherland can continue to be Jack Bauer, and he's never really gonna age out of that, cool. I'm all for it. Go ahead, do your thing. Do whatever you got to do, because I understand that if I'm watching a show, it doesn't feel weird. It makes sense to me. Okay, he might be 65 now, but he can still move and get around. He still plays the character, kind of like Bruce Willis in the Die Hards that came out in the 2000s. I understand that Bruce Willis is 55, but he's built and he can still get around, and I believe it. Just like Denzel. Denzel makes every role that he plays, even the Equalizer. Like, bruh, we understand Denzel's old, but Denzel will still give you these hands. Like, he made me believe it. So as long as I can believe it, we're good. And my last rule for shows should only be rebooted if I think shows should only be rebooted truly if it's a spinoff or a prequel. Now, mind you, my first rule was that they didn't wrap up. I think that kind of ties into it because, like I said, I don't think you ever finished the show, so you're not really rebooting it. With this one, I believe that spinoffs and prequels are the way to go if you're going to try to reboot a series or franchise and get the people, that reception that you got from the original series. Game of Thrones is doing this with House of Dragons. The Sopranos is doing this. I forget the name of theirs. I think Breaking Bad did a fantastic job with this with Better Call Saul. So there's just all kinds of. I think you can't go wrong with a prequel. You can obviously have a terrible show, but I don't think you can necessarily go wrong with prequels or spinoffs or even sequels from the original TV shows, because what it does is it gets people in a different mind frame. So yes, I'm still watching Game of Thrones, but I understand this happened 200 years before Jon Snow ever existed. So I understand that in my mind, it's going to be different. Characters are going to be different. Daenerys is not going to be here. There will be 37 dragons instead of 3. You know what I'm saying? I understand that. And then with spinoffs, you get that it's about something else, or they're moving on, or something happened. I do appreciate if I can't think of the name of the show off the top of my head, but when someone does pass and they do a spinoff, it's always nice to see that they, give a nod to the old show, but they might, make sure to let you know that this is new and this is what we're doing now. So to me, I think that spinoffs or prequels are definitely the way to go when it comes to making, doing the rebooting, show idea, that kind of thing. So I think that's the way. Those are my 4 rules of what people should follow if they're going to do a reboot or a spinoff. So let's recap. Rule number 1, they didn't wrap up. Rule number 2, all characters should be alive, willing to do it, and still perform the character that they were. And rule number 3, it should be only if it's a spinoff or a sequel. So I want you make sure you guys give me your comments on that. Let me know what you think about that. I know that was a really interesting, deep dive into reboots of shows, but I want to know what everybody thinks, and also what if you have a favorite. What's your favorite reboot? What's your favorite show that you watch, man? Let us know in the comments, man. But moving on to my second topic of the day. And I'm gonna get into this more on Friday because it's definitely gonna be closer to the date because I believe the fight's Saturday. So I'm gonna definitely get into this. And I have an announcement after this topic, but I definitely want to get into this more on Friday. But I want to touch on it a little bit today because I saw some stuff that I think we should talk about. And that is this weekend's Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather fight. Now I guess I'm interested just because I'm a Floyd Mayweather fan. He is my favorite boxer, pretty much of all time. I guess growing up, he was our GOAT in our age range. My parents had Tyson, their parents had Ali. Before that, was it Joe Frazier? Was it Joe Frazier? I don't know. I know my boxing, but it just slides off the top of my head. There's so many great fighters. They had my grandparents, Sugar Ray, Roberto Duran, those kind of guys. But Floyd is my favorite boxer, so I guess there's some interest there because of that. For me, these celebrity boxing matches, man, are interesting. Just because it's celebrities in them. I'm not one of those people that's it disgraces the sport of boxing, because personally I don't look at it as necessarily real boxing. Yes, they're hitting each other in the face, but they're not competing for world titles, or it'd be different if Jake and Logan were getting shots at the WBC or WBO titles, but they're fighting guys to get big paydays, and I'm never mad at somebody doing something, whatever they think they can do to get a bag. Like, hey, get your paper. But I'm definitely interested to see this weekend, because this is the first time either one of them has fought a real, like, true boxer. Like, Floyd, obviously we know Floyd ain't no joke. Like, Ben Askren, I thought Ben was gonna take care of Jake. Personally, I'm not gonna lie, just because I know Ben Askren is a solid UFC fighter. Like, he held a belt at one point in the UFC. Like, you can't just that. No one just does that. You just don't do that. But to see him get dropped like he did, it didn't make me think anything more about Jake. It just made me kind of be like, okay, this is who's next. Like, this is now is going to get interesting. And it did with this Logan and Floyd. So I think it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I'm going to get into a lot more on Friday. But what I wanted to get into was there's a new video that came out today. Well, I don't know if it came out today, but I saw it today on WorldStar. Shout out to the greatest website of our generation. Not other than YouTube, but shout out WorldStar. But WorldStar, man, had a video up of Logan Paul. It happened right after the, I guess, incident where Jake took Floyd's hat and, did the whole publicity thing with it. And in this video, man, Logan was concerned. And he was concerned just because he felt, or like he knew that Floyd had people that could essentially, make his word of, I'm going to kill you. It was what Floyd said. He can make that kind of come true, make you feel that a little bit. And it was just interesting because to just hear and see and watch Jake, because it was the first time that I had seen either one of the Paul brothers like truly look shook. Like, he was not, whatever he was, like, normally I would be like, oh, this is for show. Like, no, he was legit shook in this video. And he was like, man, it went from being something that was really happy and fun and nice and just something playful to now Floyd is really mad. Like, Floyd is mad. And so I don't know if the video came out for publicity. I won't say that, but I will say that he looked shook in the video. Logan looked shook, like he knows and understands now. Like, it hit him like, oh, this is the real deal. And now he's really pissed off. So I got to deal with a full grown pissed off legend who I think can still box. He's not in his prime, but he would not. I would say if you put him in the back in the rankings, I'd say he'd be definitely pound for pound top 8, top 10 in full shape. That's just me talking. But yeah, man, I think it's going to be interesting for sure. I'm excited to see these go on. I like that celebrity boxing is back, though. Like I said, it's always interesting. I'm not one of those people that's like, it's disgrace. It's always interesting. I know they just did another fight. I think Lamar Odom is supposed to fight somebody later this month. Jake and Tyrone Woodley. That'll be interesting because it's another MMA guy, but I think he is definitely, like, in terms of more in shape, more ready, whatever. Tyrone Woodley is not. I don't think he's gonna play around with Jake as much as like Ben Askren did, so it'll be definitely interesting. But yeah, man, I'm just excited to see this celebrity boxing genre back. I just think it'll be really cool to see some of these matchups that we could possibly have. I mean, honestly, I want to see some real life like beef be settled, like the Kwame Brown, Matt Barnes, ordeal. Like, I want to see that settled in the ring. I want to see like real people with vendettas against each other go against each other. Because, like, these Jake Paul fights and Logan Paul fights are cool, but, there's so much money involved and, reputations on the line. A lot of things can be lost or paid for. Ben Askren. But I really want to see some people get in there that got some bad intentions. So it'll be fun to watch. I'm sure we'll all continue to just watch it, play along, and in the event that we get those, I'll be ready to talk about them. But yeah, man, that's the show for today. Thank you guys again for coming in and listening to me and just hearing me talk about things that are going on around us. I really appreciate all of you who take time out of your day to hear me rant and ramble, man. It's it's a dream come true. Even if it's only 5-6 of you, man, I appreciate you. And lastly, I kind of want to let you guys in on this as well. Something I'm gonna do here, starting here in the future, is on Fridays we're gonna do kind of a deep dive in on sports. So, what's a filter sports? Every Friday, just about tentatively, we're shooting for every Friday. It will be me and most likely a co-host who I will introduce you guys to when the time comes. And yeah, we'll just go in about everything sports. We'll talk about whatever is going on, in football, basketball, baseball, hockey. There's no sport, soccer, Formula One, no stone left unturned. If it's big in the sports world, we will tackle it. Also on that show, we will do a little bit of gambling pod stuff on there as well. So giving you guys lines, our favorite bets for the day, things of that nature. So you can come up just like we have been doing this past year since Tennessee decided to legalize sports gambling. So just want to let you guys know that is coming. I don't know if we'll start that this Friday or, in next Friday. But yeah, it'll be definitely in the near future. But again, thank you guys for, listening to me rant and ramble. It's always much appreciated. Again, next episode 4 coming out on Friday. Be there, be square. So I guess I'll see you guys then. Peace.